Lisa had always been the kind of person who couldn't resist opening presents early. As a child, she would sneak into her parents' closet weeks before Christmas, carefully unwrapping gifts just enough to peek inside, then rewrapping them perfectly. Her family knew about this habit, but they loved her too much to be truly upset about it now. At 26, she lived in a cozy one-bedroom apartment with her boyfriend of 2 years, David. Their place wasn't fancy, but it felt like home. The living room doubled as David's workspace since he was a freelance graphic designer. And Lisa didn't mind the creative chaos that came with dating an artist. It all started on a rainy Tuesday morning in March. Lisa was getting ready for work when she noticed David acting differently. Instead of his usual routine of making coffee and scrolling through his phone, he was hunched over something at his desk in the corner of their living room. Whatever he was working on, he had covered it completely with an old bedsheet. "What's under there?" Lisa asked casually, applying her lip gloss in the mirror by the door. David looked up quickly, almost like he'd been caught doing something wrong. "Oh, just a new project. Nothing special." But Lisa knew David well enough to recognize when he was being secretive. His ears always turned slightly red when he was hiding something, and right now, they were practically glowing. "Can I see?" she asked, taking a step toward his makeshift covered workspace. "No," David said quickly, jumping up from his chair. Then, realizing how sharp he sounded, he softened his voice. "I mean, not yet. It's not ready." Lisa raised an eyebrow. In all their time together, David had never hidden his work from her. He usually loved showing her his designs, asking for her opinion on colors and layouts. This was definitely unusual. "Okay, mystery man," she said with a laugh, grabbing her purse. "I'll see you tonight." But throughout her entire workday at the local bookstore where she managed inventory, Lisa couldn't stop thinking about that covered corner. What could David possibly be working on that required such secrecy? Maybe it was a surprise for her birthday next month, or perhaps he was finally working on that children's book illustration he'd been talking about for years. When she came home that evening, the sheet was still there, but now there were additional materials scattered around it. She could see the edges of what looked like art supplies, some small tools she didn't recognize, and what appeared to be reference photos, though she couldn't make out what they showed from her angle. David emerged from the kitchen with a proud smile, holding two plates of spaghetti. "Dinner is served, my lady." As they ate, Lisa tried to act normal, but her eyes kept drifting to that mysterious corner. David noticed, of course. "You're curious about my project," he said, twirling pasta around his fork. "Maybe a little," Lisa admitted, trying to sound casual. David set down his fork and looked at her seriously. "Lisa, I need you to promise me something. Don't look at what's under there, okay? I know how you are with surprises, but this one is really important to me. Can you trust me on this?" The way he said it made Lisa's heart skip a beat. This wasn't just about a work project. This was something bigger, something that mattered to him deeply. "I promise," she said, though even as the words left her mouth, she felt her curiosity growing stronger. The next few days were torture for Lisa. Every morning, David would uncover his project and work on it for hours. Every time she entered the living room, he would quickly throw the sheet back over it, saying those same words, "Don't look. Please, just trust me." Lisa found herself developing elaborate theories about what could be hidden under that sheet. Maybe he was building something. The sound she heard sometimes suggested he was working with his hands, not just drawing. There were soft tapping noises, the sound of something being sanded, and occasionally, what sounded like him talking to himself as he worked. She tried to respect his wishes. She really did. But Lisa had never been good at ignoring mysteries. She would find herself standing near the covered area when David was in the shower, listening for any clues about what might be underneath. She would study the shape of the sheet, trying to figure out the dimensions of whatever he was hiding. One evening, while David was at the grocery store, Lisa stood in front of the covered workspace for a full 10 minutes. Her hands actually moved toward the edge of the sheet twice, but each time she stopped herself. It wasn't just about keeping her promise anymore. She realized that David's request for her to wait meant something important to him, and she didn't want to disappoint him. But that didn't make the waiting any easier. David seemed to notice her internal struggle. He started leaving little notes for her around the apartment. "Patience is a virtue," one read. Another said, "Good things come to those who wait." Her favorite was stuck to the bathroom mirror. "Your curiosity is one of the things I love most about you, but sometimes the best surprises are worth waiting for." Lisa started leaving her own notes in response. "I'm trying to be patient, but it's harder than you think," she wrote on the refrigerator. On his coffee mug, she left a note that said, "I'm not looking, but I'm definitely thinking about looking." Their apartment became filled with these playful messages, turning Lisa's curiosity into a game between them. But underneath the humor, Lisa could sense that whatever David was working on was becoming more important to him each day. He would spend hours at that corner, completely absorbed in his project, forgetting to eat lunch or take breaks. Sometimes, late at night, she would wake up to find his side of the bed empty and see light coming from the living room. David would be there, working quietly by lamplight, so focused on his mysterious project that he didn't even notice her watching him. From the bedroom doorway, whatever he was creating, it was clearly something special, and despite her burning curiosity, Lisa found herself feeling proud that he trusted her enough to keep his secret safe, even when keeping it felt almost impossible. As the weeks went by, David's mysterious project became the center of their daily life. Lisa would wake up in the morning to find him already sitting at his covered workspace, a cup of coffee growing cold beside him. She could tell he was completely absorbed in whatever he was creating because he wouldn't even notice when she said good morning, until she touched his shoulder gently. The sounds coming from that corner of the room became more interesting each day. Lisa had developed an ear for the different noises. There was the soft scratching sound, like pencil on paper, but also something that sounded like carving or etching. Sometimes she heard the gentle tap-tap-tap of what might be a small hammer. Other times, there were longer periods of complete silence when David seemed to be just looking at his work, planning his next move. Lisa found herself becoming a detective in her own home. She would notice when David bought new supplies, trying to figure out what they might be for. One day, he came home with a small paper bag from the craft store. She caught a glimpse of what looked like tiny paint brushes and some kind of special glue. But when she asked about it, David just smiled and said, "Nothing you need to worry about." The most frustrating part was how happy David seemed while working on his secret project. She would catch him smiling to himself, sometimes even chuckling softly as he worked. Whatever he was making was bringing him real joy, and that made Lisa even more curious about what could possibly make him so content. Their friends started to notice too. When their couple friends Jake and Mia came over for dinner, Mia immediately spotted the covered corner. "What's under the sheet?" she asked directly. Just like Lisa had weeks ago. David and Lisa exchanged a look. "It's a surprise," David said simply. "For Lisa?" Jake asked with a grin. David's ears turned that familiar shade of red. "Maybe," after their friends left. Lisa cornered David in the kitchen. "So it is for me," she said, trying not to sound too excited. "I didn't say that," David replied, but he was fighting back a smile. "You didn't deny it either," Lisa pointed out. David wrapped his arms around her waist. "Can you please just trust me a little longer? I promise it will be worth the wait." Lisa wanted to be patient. She really did. But every day, her curiosity grew stronger. She started having dreams about what might be under that sheet. In one dream, it was a beautiful painting of the two of them. In another, it was some kind of mechanical invention that would make their lives easier. Her imagination was running wild. The worst part was when David would leave for his part-time job at the local print shop. Lisa would be alone in the apartment with the covered mystery just sitting there, practically calling her name. She developed a routine of making herself stay busy during these times. She would clean the entire apartment, reorganize her bookshelf, or call her sister to chat for hours. Anything to keep from walking over to that corner. One particularly difficult afternoon, Lisa found herself standing right in front of the covered workspace. She was so close she could smell the faint scent of wood stain. And something else she couldn't identify. Her hand actually reached out toward the edge of the sheet, her fingers just inches away from solving the mystery that had been driving her crazy for weeks. But then she stopped. She thought about how excited David got when he worked on his project, how he would hum softly to himself while he created whatever was hidden there. She thought about the trust he had placed in her and how disappointed he would be if she broke that trust instead of peeking. Lisa sat down on the couch and wrote David a note. I was this close to looking today, but I didn't. You better make this worth it. When David came home from work and found the note, he laughed out loud. Then he sat down next to her and pulled her close. You have no idea how much it means to me that you're waiting, he said seriously. This project, whatever it is, it's important to me in a way I can't really explain yet. But your patience, your trust, that's what's making it possible. Lisa felt her heart melt a little. She realized this wasn't just about satisfying her curiosity anymore. This was about something bigger between them, something about faith and love and the kind of trust that makes relationships stronger. But that didn't make the waiting any easier. David seemed to understand her struggle. He started giving her little hints, not about what he was making, but about why he was making it. It's something that tells a story, he said one evening while they watched a movie. What kind of story? Lisa asked immediately. A love story, David replied, squeezing her hand. Another time, while they were cooking dinner together, he mentioned, it's something that will last a long time. How long? Lisa pressed. Hopefully forever, David said, and there was something in his voice that made Lisa's stomach flutter with butterflies. The hints made everything worse and better at the same time. They fed her curiosity while also making her understand that whatever David was creating was deeply meaningful to both of them. As the project stretched into its second month, Lisa noticed that David was becoming more careful about covering his work. He would double-check that the sheet was properly arranged before leaving the room. He started working later at night when he thought Lisa was asleep, though she often lay in bed listening to the gentle sounds of his creating. One night, she woke up around 2 in the morning and found David's side of the bed empty. She could see the soft glow of his desk lamp from under the bedroom door. Unable to resist, she crept to the door and opened it just a crack. David was there, working by lamplight, completely focused on something small in his hands. His face was filled with such concentration and love that Lisa felt tears spring to her eyes. Whatever he was making, it was made with more care and attention than anything she had ever seen. And somehow, that made waiting for the reveal both harder and easier at the same time. By the 3rd month, Lisa had developed an almost superhuman level of self-control. The covered corner had become like a forbidden treasure chest in their living room, and she had gotten surprisingly good at ignoring it. Well, mostly ignoring it. The real test came on a Saturday afternoon when David had to rush out unexpectedly. His younger brother had called with car trouble, and David needed to go help him with a flat tire on the other side of town. I'll be back in a couple of hours, David said, grabbing his keys and wallet. At the door, he paused and looked back at Lisa, who was sitting on the couch reading a book. You'll be okay here alone? He asked, but his eyes drifted toward the covered workspace. Lisa understood exactly what he was really asking. I'll be fine, she said with a reassuring smile. Go help your brother. After David left, the apartment felt unusually quiet. Lisa tried to continue reading her book, but the words on the page started to blur together. She could practically feel the presence of the covered mystery across the room. Like it was calling to her. She got up and made herself a cup of tea, deliberately walking the long way around the living room to avoid getting too close to David's workspace. But even from the kitchen, she could see the edge of the sheet fluttering slightly in the breeze from the open window. Just focus on something else, she told herself out loud. Clean the bathroom, organize the closet, call Mom. But none of those activities held her attention. After 20 minutes of half-heartedly folding laundry, Lisa found herself standing just a few feet away from the covered corner. The silence in the apartment made everything feel more intense. like she was the only person in the world who didn't know the secret. Her heart started beating faster. She took a step closer, then another. The sheet was just an arm's length away now. All she would have to do is lift one corner, just peek for a second, and she could finally know what David had been working on all this time. Lisa reached out her hand, her fingers trembling slightly. She could almost touch the fabric of the sheet. In her mind, she imagined what she might see underneath. Something beautiful. Something David had made with his own hands. Something meant just for her. But then she stopped. Her hand froze in midair. She thought about David's face when he worked on his project, how peaceful and focused he looked. She remembered his words from weeks ago. Your patience, your trust. That's what's making it possible. She realized that looking now wouldn't just be breaking a promise to David. It would be breaking something inside herself, something about who she wanted to be as a person. Lisa pulled her hand back and took a deep breath. No, she said firmly to the empty apartment. I'm not going to look. Instead, she walked to the opposite side of the room and sat down in the chair that faced away from David's workspace. She picked up her phone and called her best friend Amy. I almost looked, Lisa confessed as soon as Amy answered. Looked at what? Amy asked. Confused, Lisa explained the whole situation. How David had been working on this mysterious project for months. How hard it was to resist peeking. And how she had just come dangerously close to giving in to temptation. Wow, Amy said. When Lisa finished, that's actually really romantic. He's putting so much trust in you. I know. Lisa said. That's what stopped me. It's not just about the surprise anymore. It's about proving to myself that I can be the kind of person who keeps promises, even when no one is watching. That's pretty deep for a Saturday afternoon, Amy laughed. But I'm proud of you. Not everyone could resist that kind of mystery. After talking to Amy for another hour, Lisa felt much calmer. She actually felt proud of herself for resisting temptation. When David came home later that evening, she was cooking dinner and humming to herself. How did it go with your brother? She asked, giving him a welcome home hug. Got the tire fixed, David said, then looked at her carefully. How was your afternoon? Everything okay here? Lisa could have lied. She could have just said everything was fine, and David would never have known about her moment of weakness, but something about the trust they had been building made her want to be honest. I almost looked. She admitted. I got really close. Closer than I've ever gotten before. David's eyes widened with surprise and worry. But you didn't? No, I didn't, Lisa said firmly. And you know what? I'm glad I didn't. Not just because I would have spoiled your surprise, but because I realized something about myself. I realized that keeping this promise to you has become important to me in a way I didn't expect. David's face softened with emotion. He pulled her into a tight hug and held her for a long moment without saying anything. What you just told me, he said finally. That means more to me than you could possibly know. That night, as they lay in bed, Lisa found herself feeling different about the covered corner. It was still there, still mysterious, still calling to her curiosity. But now it felt like something else too. It felt like a symbol of the trust and love that was growing stronger between them every day. David, she whispered in the darkness, yeah, whatever you're making over there. I hope you know that the waiting has been worth it, not just for the surprise, but for what it's taught me about us. David turned to face her in the dark. What has it taught you? Lisa thought for a moment. That some things are more important than getting what you want right away. That trust is something you build one choice at a time. And that love isn't just about the big moments. It's about all the little moments when you choose to honor each other, even when it's hard. David reached over and squeezed her hand. I love you. He said simply, I love you too. Lisa replied, even if you are the most secretive person I've ever met. They both laughed softly in the darkness, and for the first time in months, Lisa fell asleep without wondering what was under that sheet. 3.5 months had passed since the mysterious project began, and Lisa had almost gotten used to the covered corner being part of their daily life. Almost. But lately, Something had changed in David's behavior that made her curiosity spike all over again. He had started acting nervous in a way she had never seen before. David was usually calm and collected, the type of person who could handle any situation with a smile. But now, he would jump slightly when she entered a room, and she caught him staring at his covered workspace with an expression that looked almost worried. One evening, while they were washing dishes together, Lisa noticed David's hands shaking slightly as he dried a plate. "Are you okay?" she asked, concerned. "You seem really tense lately." David set down the plate and took a deep breath. "I'm fine, just thinking about work stuff." But Lisa knew this wasn't about his graphic design clients. This was about whatever was hidden under that sheet. And David's nervousness was making her more curious than ever. The next morning, Lisa woke up to find David already dressed and sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at his hands. "David, what's wrong?" she asked, sitting up quickly. "You're scaring me a little." He turned to look at her, and she could see something intense in his eyes, like he was trying to make an important decision. "Lisa," he said slowly, "what if I told you that tonight might be the night?" Lisa's heart stopped for a moment. "The night? For what?" "The night you finally get to see what I've been working on." Lisa felt like all the air had been sucked out of the room. After months of waiting, months of curiosity and self-control, the moment might finally be here. "Really?" she whispered. David nodded, but he still looked nervous. "I think it's ready. Well, almost ready. I need to do a few more small things today, but tonight." He trailed off, running his hands through his hair. "David, you're making me nervous now too," Lisa said with a shaky laugh. "What is it? Is it really that big of a deal?" David stood up and began pacing around their small bedroom. "Lisa, what we have together, it's the most important thing in my life. You know that, right?" "Of course I know that," Lisa said, getting out of bed and walking over to him. "And you're the most important thing in mine too. But you're really starting to worry me." "What is under that sheet?" David stopped pacing and took her hands in his. "Something that I hope will make you as happy as you've made me every single day." For the past 2 years, Lisa felt tears starting to form in her eyes, though she wasn't sure why. There was something in David's voice, something in the way he was looking at her, that made this feel bigger than just revealing an art project. Throughout the entire day, David was a bundle of nervous energy. He would work at his covered station for a few minutes, then walk away and pace around the apartment. He barely ate lunch, and Lisa caught him talking to himself under his breath several times. "David, seriously, you need to calm down," Lisa said around 3 in the afternoon. "Whatever it is, I'm going to love it because you made it. You don't need to be so worried. It's not that simple," David replied, wiping sweat from his forehead even though the apartment wasn't warm. Lisa had never seen him like this. The David she knew was confident and easygoing. This version of David looked like he was preparing for the most important moment of his life. As evening approached, David's nervousness seemed to reach a peak. He kept checking his phone, looking at the time, then looking back at his covered workspace. Finally, around 7 o'clock, he disappeared into the bathroom for what felt like an hour. Lisa could hear him talking to himself, probably giving himself a pep talk. When he emerged, he had changed into the nice button-down shirt she had bought him for his birthday, and his hair was carefully styled. "Why are you so dressed up?" Lisa asked, suddenly feeling underdressed in her casual jeans and sweater. "Should I change too?" "No, you're perfect," David said quickly. "You're always perfect." But his voice was shaking. Lisa was starting to feel nervous herself now. David's anxiety was contagious, and she found herself wondering if she was really ready to see whatever had been hidden from her for so long. What if it wasn't what she expected? What if her reaction disappointed him after all the time and effort he had put into it? Around 8 o'clock, David took several deep breaths and walked over to where Lisa was sitting on the couch. "I think it's time," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Lisa's heart started pounding so hard she was sure David could hear it. "Are you sure? You seem really nervous about this." "I am nervous," David admitted. I'm more nervous than I've ever been about anything in my entire life. Why? Lisa asked softly. David sat down next to her and took her hands again. Because what I'm about to show you, it's not just a project I've been working on. It's a question I've been wanting to ask you, and your answer is going to change everything. Lisa felt the world tilt slightly. A question? What kind of question required months of secret preparation, David? She said, her voice barely working. What kind of question? But David was already standing up, walking toward the covered corner with steps that looked like they required all of his courage. Come here, he said, his back to her. Please. Lisa stood up on legs that felt like jelly. She walked over to where David stood next to his mysterious workspace, her heart beating so fast she felt dizzy. David turned to face her, and she could see that his eyes were bright with unshed tears. Before I show you this, he said, his voice thick with emotion, I want you to know that every day you waited, every time you trusted me enough not to look, it made me more sure that you're the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. Lisa's breath caught in her throat. The rest of his life, with trembling hands. David reached for the corner of the sheet that had hidden his secret for over 3 months. David pulled away the sheet with one smooth motion, and Lisa gasped so loudly that she covered her mouth with both hands. Standing before her was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. It was a wooden memory box, about the size of a large jewelry case, but every single inch of it was covered in the most intricate hand-carved details she could have imagined. The wood was a warm honey color that seemed to glow in the lamplight, and as Lisa looked closer, she realized that the carvings weren't just random decorations. They were scenes from their relationship. On the front panel, David had carved them. Coffee shop where they had their first date, complete with tiny tables and chairs and even the little bell that hung over the door. Lisa could see the small figures sitting at a corner table, and she knew without asking that they were meant to be her and David. Oh my goodness, she whispered, reaching out to touch the carved surface with just the tip of her finger. David, this is incredible. But David wasn't finished. With hands that were still shaking, he turned the box slightly so Lisa could see the side panel. Here, he had carved the scene from their first vacation together when they had gotten caught in a rainstorm while hiking and had ended up laughing and dancing in the mud. Lisa remembered that day perfectly. They had been soaked and miserable, but somehow it had turned into one of their favorite memories. How did you remember all these details? Lisa asked, her voice full of wonder. I remember everything about us, David said softly. Every moment that mattered. He turned the box again, showing her another side. This panel showed the little apartment where they lived now, with its crooked front steps and the window box, where Lisa grew herbs. Even their old car was there, carved in miniature detail, including the small dent in the front bumper from when David had backed into a post. At the grocery store, Lisa felt tears starting to flow down her cheeks, but she was smiling so widely that her face almost hurt. Each panel told a different part of their story together, carved with such love and attention that she could almost feel the memories coming to life in the wood. David, I can't believe you made this, she said, wiping her eyes. This must have taken you hundreds of hours. It took exactly 4 months and 3 days, David said with a nervous laugh. But who's counting? Lisa was about to tell him how much she loved it when she noticed something else. The box had a small brass latch on the front, and David was looking at it with an expression that suggested the real surprise wasn't the box itself. There's more, isn't there? She asked quietly. David nodded, his nervousness returning full force. Lisa, this box, it's not just meant to hold memories. It's meant to hold our future too. He reached over and carefully opened the latch. The lid of the box lifted on small hinges, and Lisa could see that the inside was lined with deep blue velvet. But what made her heart stop was what was sitting in the center of that velvet lining. A ring. Not just any ring, but the most beautiful engagement ring Lisa had ever seen. It was elegant and simple, with a single diamond that caught the light and sparkled like a tiny star. But what made it even more special was that it was sitting in a small carved wooden holder that matched the box perfectly. Lisa looked from the ring to David's face and back to the ring again. She felt like the whole world had gone quiet around them. Lisa, David said. And then he did something that made her start crying all over again. He got down on one knee right there, in their living room, next to the workspace where he had spent months creating this incredible surprise. For the past 4 months, I've been working on this box because I wanted to create something that would show you how much our life together means to me. Every scene I carved, every detail I added. It was my way of promising you that I will never take our love for granted. Lisa was crying so hard now that she could barely see, but she didn't want to miss a single word. You trusted me enough to wait, even when I know your curiosity was driving you crazy. You respected my secret even when you could have easily looked. That trust, that patience, that's the kind of love I want to build my whole life on. David reached into the box and took out the ring, holding it up to her with hands that were shaking with emotion. Lisa, will you marry me? For a moment, Lisa couldn't speak. She looked at David's hopeful, nervous face, then at the incredible wooden box he had created with his own hands, then at the ring that represented their future together. Everything felt perfect and overwhelming and magical all at once. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes, of course, yes. David slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, like it had been made just for her, which she realized it had been. Then he stood up and pulled her into the tightest hug of her entire life. I can't believe you made that whole box, Lisa said, laughing and crying at the same time. I kept trying to guess what you were working on, but I never imagined anything like this. I wanted it to be special, David said, spinning her round in their small living room. I wanted to give you something that no one else in the world would ever have. Lisa looked at the wooden memory box sitting open on David's workspace, showing off all the carved scenes of their life together. She looked at the ring on her finger, sparkling in the lamplight, and she looked at David, the man who had spent months creating the most thoughtful, beautiful proposal she could have ever dreamed of. You know what the best part is, she said, smiling up at him. What? I'm so glad I didn't peek. This was worth waiting for. David laughed and kissed her, and Lisa realized that some surprises really are worth the wait, especially when they come with a promise of forever.